address council, the microphone is there, and we'd be happy to hear from you. So I'll let you have at it. Anybody? Maybe not today. That's all right. Mayor's message, just a few items of note. New school happened this week or last week. We got started and underway. Absolutely fantastic in there. Took a tour through, hadn't seen it since probably the beginning of the summer, and it was very impressive. And the attitude and the feel in the school is really a welcoming one, and the students are quite excited about what the new school has to offer. So kudos to School District 62 for the acquirement of not one but two brand new schools for our students, and I think there'll be some really exciting things going forward. A couple of other things. There was a thank you letter from Fort Rod Hill and Fisgart Lighthouse for our contribution towards the Canada Day celebrations. Also a thank you letter from the Literacy Connection West Shore for our donation and proclamation of Literacy Month. And so those two stand. This past weekend I attended the Ovarian Cancer Walk on Sunday and did my 5K in support of the cause, and it was well attended. This was their 10th year in operation. They went from 9 teams last year to 19 teams this year. So it's like a 100% growth factor in there. So kudos to Nicole and Kim and Phil and the folks down there that are really making a difference. And the English Car Show. So that was held at Fort Rod Hill. There was probably about 180 vehicles of various English descents parked out there in the field space, and some pretty nice looking vehicles that have had a lot of care and attention over the years. So it was quite interesting. Moving on, and UBCM we've got coming up in a week, folks, so everybody's hard at their resolution books, I hope. And then we'll be away for that duration. So looking for now adoption of minutes of the regular meeting of council August 31st.
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Receipt, please, for 2 sets of minutes, one for planning and land use, July 7th, the other for transportation public infrastructure, July 6th.
So moved. Or move to receive, pardon me. Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Presentations, we have 2 this evening. Mr. Lowry, Manager of Communications, Western Canada Marine Response Corporation, in regards to marine spill response on West Coast. Mr. Lowry.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me? Good. Okay. Thank you, Mayor and Council, for putting us on the agenda this evening. This is kind of a rundown on our organization. There's a number of different factors that are inputting our business over the past year or so. So this is the first time we're going out and doing an education piece and talking about not only what we've done in the past, but how we're preparing for some of the challenges that are coming down on the West Coast. So I'm going to go really quickly through this. This is usually a 40-minute presentation. I'm going to get it down to 10 minutes, so we're going to bail right through this. Just quickly, a bit of history. We've been doing this for 40 years. For the first 20 years, we were a co-op just within Burrard Inlet, but after Exxon Valdez, we expanded to cover the entire coast. That particular spill did trigger some changes within the Canadian government, where they actually brought spill response under the jurisdiction of Transport Canada. So it's all governed through the Canada Shipping Act. Different agencies have different responsibilities within that regime. So Transport Canada is the lead regulator, and they certify all response organizations. So if you want to be a response organization in Canada, you need to go the certification process through Transport. And they also do regime reviews, which is currently underway, and I'll talk about that as well. Coast Guard obviously has a big role in the regime. They do have capacity to respond to minor spills, so they may get called out and they may use their own boom and equipment. But for the larger spills, they typically are going to engage us Another important piece for the Coast Guard is they're what we call the federal monitoring officer. So if there's a spill and the polluter or with the responsible party, who by law has to not only pay for the spill but have to manage the operation, if they're not doing a good job, if they're unable or unwilling to clean up the spill, then the Coast Guard can step in and take charge of the operation, and then they have the authority to contract us. Environment Canada, BCMOE, DFO, and some other players, they're what we call the science advisors within the regime. So Environment Canada, for example, they look into what we call the fate and behavior of products. So you hear a lot about diluted bitumen or dilbit, how does it behave in the marine environment? Environment Canada does studies to look into those issues. And then the response organizations, which is us, we're sort of the contractors within that regime. We're the boots on the ground, but also we do a lot of training for our own contractors. We do also have capacity to manage a spill from the land as well. So all of our front-end staff are trained in a system called ICS. So that's that next slide here. Incident command system is a system that's used by emergency planners to handle emergencies around the world. So it's an international model, and it's a great way to manage people. This is the system that we use during oil spills as well. Why I put this up here is to point out that within Unified Command, so in an emergency, typically you have multiple jurisdictions that are going to be impacted. So Unified Command is that spot where all those different entities can come together to make decisions on how to respond to the spill. So that's not only the different municipalities that might be impacted, but the different levels of government, including First Nations. The Shipping Act after Exxon, they actually went out and put in what we call response planning standards. So the time we have to respond to a spill is actually laid out in law. This is what that currently looks like right now. The green area, we have up to 6 hours to respond, and you're getting into 12, 18 hours as we move out. The issue with these is that they're quite out of date. They haven't been changed since the early 90s. So what's happening now is there's a regime review underway to take a look at some of these response times and see if they're adequate. That regime review is happening. Transport commissioned a panel to look and make some recommendations and change. We submitted some evidence towards this report as well, and we're happy to see that some of the main recommendations that we were hoping to see move forward are going to move forward. And the key one there is that we're moving to a whole regime that's based on the potential risk of a spill. So those previous planning standard numbers, they were relatively arbitrary, not really quite sure where some of those numbers came from. Now we're going to move to a system where we're actually going to base the response times on the risk of a given area. So the government is moving forward with this. They're doing pilot projects. There's 4 pilot projects. There's only one on the West Coast, which is where the risk is highest. And not surprisingly, that's the southern shipping lane. So all the vessel traffic comes out of Port Menchur, Vancouver, and heads down through Paxanage there, around Race Rocks, and then out to Boyd J. So that's where the traffic is heaviest currently. So that's the area of highest risk. What's going to happen now is they're going to do a risk assessment for that hot zone, for that red zone right there, and then we're going to have new area plans and response times come out of that process. So we're happy to see that the government's moving ahead with that. And then this is a little bit on how we fit within that system. We do have, this is a shot of where we have assets currently. So we do have warehouse facilities in Burnaby. On the island, we have one in Duncan, and then we have one up in Prince Rupert as well. The orange dots are where we have what we call unmanned equipment depots or equipment caches. So we train contractors within those areas to be able to access and deploy the equipment that's there while we're mobilizing from some of our main warehouses. Quickly on funding. So the legislation states that any vessel over 400 tons that's flying on a Canadian port, it doesn't matter what kind of vessel it is, it could be carrying grain, it could be carrying cars, it could be carrying lumber. If it's over 400 tons and calling a Canadian port, they must have an arrangement with the spill response organization. So on the West Coast, that's us. So we charge them a yearly fee. Also, oil handling facilities. So any facility where there's oil going over the dock from land to water, they also have to have an arrangement with the response organization. That's us. So in this case, we charge what's called a volatile cargo fee based on the volume of oil that goes over the dock. We also have something called subscribers, and those are entities that even by law they don't have to have an we do have a fleet of 31 vessels, and they're roughly distributed equally between those three bases that I talked about. We do have significant amounts of boom. I'll talk about that in a little bit here. This is just a quick snapshot of where we do have assets on Vancouver Island. So in Victoria, we have 4 vessels. They were at Esquimalt. We just recently moved them to Point Hope, just in terms of ease of access and security. So we have at our base up in Duncan, we have some other vessels. Those are actually on trailers. Sometimes it's easier for us to use roads to get to where we need to go. And then we do have another boat in the Nanaimo Port Owner. Some of the newer stuff we purchased. This is the newest boat in our fleet. We launched it 2 weeks ago. It can go 26, 28 knots. And then once it's on scene, it deploys those yellow blue lines you see on the side, and then it acts as a mobile skimming vessel, so it doesn't actually skim the oil itself. So it's very fast. It's also quite a large vessel, which can handle some of those over water conditions. So the biggest improvements in slow response is around surveillance. Historically, we've had to rely on overflights from airplanes, which is not going to do as much good at night or in foggy conditions. So we've been making purchases on surveillance systems. This is a blimp that we can launch from any of our vessels. It has a forward-looking infrared camera on it, so we can see and detect oil at nighttime or in foggy conditions. And then we're also not relying on other agencies for our surveillance. This piece of equipment is called the current buster. A lot of the improvements in slow response are coming out of Norway. They've got a lot of money for research and development. So this particular piece is about $500,000. And its big improvement is just in terms of how fast you can clean up the oil with it. Traditionally, most of the equipment you can go 0.5, 0.6 knots when you're recovering oil. This you can go up to 6 to 7 knots for recovery. It's also works quite a bit better in choppier water conditions. Some of the other improvements, a lot of it came out of the Gulf, is just in terms of how much oil we can suck up per hour. We use tons as a measurement, so this particular machine can have 150 tons of oil per hour. So here's how where we're kind of stacked up compared to the Shipping Act requirements. So on the left there, those numbers represent the amount of equipment we have to have by law under the Shipping Act on the coast. And then the number on the right there, those numbers are what we actually have now in our inventory. So if you look at the skimming tons per hour, that one skimmer that I talked about that can do 150 tons, that one skimmer is 5 times the requirements for the entire coast. So this is really the trigger for screenshot of it there on the top left. All of those yellow dots are where there's a sensitivity. So if you go into this, you can go use your iPad, you can use your phone, and you click on one of those dots, that response strategy pops right. We can also overlay a lot of other information on there. We can look at where our equipment is. We can look at who the contractors are in the area, where are we going to house everyone, what are the caters, all that logistical information we can house in this mapping tool as well. And then a little bit about the Trans Mountain project. So when Trans Mountain started looking at what their project would turn into, they looked at those response times that we talked about right at the start of the presentation. Those 6, 12, 18 hours. And they recognized that those numbers weren't going to work for their project. So they proposed what we're calling enhancements. So instead of 6 hours within Port Metro, it's down to 2 hours. And for that entire southern shipping route, it's down to 6 hours. So once they developed those new planning standards, they came to us and asked us to build an equipment plan that would be able to meet those new requirements. So we put together a plan, and what it's going to mean is a number of new bases on Vancouver Island. So we'd be going to 24-hour operations in Vancouver Harbor. We'd be adding a base in Steveston, something up in the Nanaimo most likely, something somewhere on the Sandwich Peninsula, and then the location, a base either in Swift or Beecher Bay, and then something on the western side of the island as well. Finally, looks like what our organization would be if some of those projects went ahead. So right now we have a full-time staff of 50. Business as usual growth this year would be another 15 staff. But if Trans Mountain went ahead, we'd be adding another 100. Northern Gate went ahead, that would be another potentially 200. So we could be going in the span of 2 years from an organization of 50 up to almost 400 employees. So that's it. That's the 40 minutes in 10 minutes. Did you have time for a couple of questions?
Anything to Mr. Lowry, Council? National?
Sorry, the D&D fueling docks, do they come under your jurisdiction?
Yes, any time oil's going over the dock, it becomes under our jurisdiction. We do have access to both D&D and Coast Guard's inventory of equipment, but we can't rely on using that particular, that bit of equipment.
Thank you. And you're mentioning response times. I was wondering if anything was learned from the response times and notification from this recent spill in Vancouver Harbor?
Yeah, so I'd probably recommend the Coast Guard released an independent review of that about 2 weeks ago. John Butler drafted it. The main recommendations there were that there's some confusion between Coast Guard and Port Metro in terms of roles and responsibilities. Our actual response time from when we were activated to when we're on scene was considered excellent. It was about 80 minutes between those 2 times.
Good. Anyone else? Mr. Lowry, thank you very much.
Sorry, I
Oh,
have one
sorry.
question. And it's either to you or to staff. Is there any financial cost if there was a spill, for example, like in our waters, is there any financial cost to the municipality that we should be preparing for or budgeting?
Yeah, no, it is a fluid-pay model. So all those costs would be recovered from the RP. There's different levels of compensation. There's the ship's insurance that covers up to the size of that particular vessel. If that gets tapped out, there's an international fund that is accessible. If that gets tapped out, then there's a Canadian fund that's accessible. There's all told about $1.3, $1.4 billion available. And the Canadian government has said that if for some reason all of that was tapped out, then they would install a levy back onto our industry to recover that cost. The whole spirit of the regime is that the taxpayers don't pay that. That said, there was an instance in the Maritasa where the Unified Command didn't necessarily agree with some of the expenses that municipalities decide to incur, so they may be challenged in trying to recoup that particular cost. So unless the Unified Command signs off on an expense, it won't be covered. So that's where, so potentially if you decided to go above and beyond what was happening during the spill, that you might have the challenge to recover those costs. But in terms of pre-budgeting, no.
And just as a quick follow-up, just to hear what you're saying, so you're out there, you're fixing it, we wouldn't get a bill that we would get reimbursed for. We wouldn't even see a bill.
Your expenses you would submit hit one of those funds to get reimbursed.
Oh, okay.
For the
So it would be our
had to.
cost upfront.
Exactly.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
If I could just add to Councillor Martin's question, which is a good one. I was just reviewing this, we do also carry environmental contamination liability insurance that also would help in this particular situation.
Thank you.
And we would be working quite closely with the city's emergency planners. They'd be involved in that whole process. We'd be working with them. So their costs would have to be recouped from the and likely the role of the Colorado emergency planners would be to facilitate with some of the public education in terms of getting people onto the beaches, how do we do with the volunteers, that side of it. During Marathon, the cities and the districts were very, very helpful in that regard.
Good. Thank you. Anything else? Mr. Lowry, thank you very much for your time.
I will be at UBCM as well, so if you want to have sort of a deeper dive into some of the stuff.
Good, thanks. Next on the agenda, folks, West Shore Parks and Recreation in regards to the application for amendment to a liquor primary license and a food primary establishment at Juan de Fuca. Jeff, are you leading or Wade?
Your Worship.
Pardon me?
Your Worship.
Yep.
What I would suggest is, because there is a report on this issue later on in the agenda, it may be, with Council's indulgence, worthwhile to bring forward the report at this point in time. I can introduce it, then turn it over to the staff of West Shore Parks and Rec, and then bring it back for a final commentary in regards to options, next steps.
Seems reasonable to me, Council.
Excuse me, Your Worship. Councillor Martin and I have to excuse ourselves for a conflict of interest.
Did we get that clarified?
He does think that's true.
So,
We'll stay away until you guys vote on it.
yeah, we have two members of council who sit at the Parks and Rec board representing the municipality, and because of the situation in the courts of conflict of interest, they will be departing the conversation. So,
Goodbye.
bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
With that, Mr. Nason?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll draw your attention to the staff report, which is on page 67 of your agenda, and I'll just introduce the topic because there are staff from West Shore Parks and Rec here this evening. We've invited them primarily just for a question and answer component, but I will lead it off in regards to why this matters before you. This concerns an application for an amendment to the liquor primary license and food primary license at the Juan de Fuca Rec Center. And West Shore Parks and Rec currently holds two active liquor licenses. A food primary license, which has licensed areas with a total occupant load of 621. And a second license, it's called a liquor primary license, which has licensed areas with a total occupant load of 194. The Liquor Control and Licensing Branch has a process, and they have requested that Colwood Council consider this application, and if Council wishes, provides a resolution with comments by October the 28th of this year. On pages 68 and 69, the Director of Administration has set out in some detail the overview of the proposed changes. And no changes are proposed to the current licensed hours of operation. However, there are a number of proposed changes which are set out in the report. I would ask the staff from West Shore Parks and Rec perhaps to give a very brief, high-level summary of those changes, because they are a little bit confusing, and the Liquor Control and Licensing Branch, the way they require this to be formatted, isn't necessarily conducive to clear understanding at some point in time. So with that, I'll just turn it over to the staff of West Shore Parks and Rec. They're here to answer any questions, and then I'll bring it back and outline our options and recommendation for council. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. And now, Jeff.
Thanks, Mayor and Council. Okay, yeah, so sorry I don't have a nice presentation. We're pretty much just going to go off the report that was prepared and answer some of the questions and, kind of like you mentioned, do a nice overview of the situation. So as you're aware, West Shore Parks and Recreation has a number of venues in which we provide food and beverage services. Like mentioned, we have been working closely with the Liquor Control and Licensing Branch to have a look at all of our services and make sure we meet the needs not only of our clients, but also to keep ourselves out of contravention. So touching on to some of the points that were just brought up, there's about 5 major areas that we're looking at making the changes to. So I'll just go through those, and if we want to stop and answer questions during that process or at the end, that would work fine for us. So one of them would be licensing the lounge and games area on the main level of the seniors hall. The current spaces are unoccupied with the license right now, so we'd be, through working with buildings, have been given approval for 75 persons for the games room and the lounge. So that would be in addition to the seniors hall that is currently licensed. The priority and the rationale for that is to just give ourselves additional space to accommodate usage. We do have a number of bookings coming forward, and having the additional space in the seniors hall does give us that opportunity to accommodate the catering needs. The second area is increasing the occupant load in the field house from 130 persons to 190 persons, as well as the outdoor patio of the field house from 30 persons to 50 persons. Again, the building code allowed us to increase those areas. The main priority of increasing those spaces is, again, to accommodate the need for larger group bookings, as well as with the introduction of the West Shore Rugby Football Club, formerly known as VLOX, that space that they're going to be primarily using on weekends, and having the additional capacity not only in the field house but on the patio gives them more of an opportunity to bring out their fans and supporters to watch the games on field number 1. The third area is adding an outdoor patio with an occupant load of 567 persons to the grassy area in front of the Pro Shop, which is our golf course Pro Shop. That area outside the Pro Shop's it's a very nice and clean and inviting environment for someone to sit down and enjoy a beverage after or before a round of golf. So although the capacity has been given to us at 567 people, we would never set it for more than 10 to 15 tables with the maximum capacity ever of 15 to 30 people. We don't expect a lot of usage of that area, and we may not actually use it until there is a need for it, but because we're going through this process with Liquor Control and Licensing, they recommended that we add anything that we feel that would be or could be used in the future. The next area, which is one of the bigger areas that we have addressed, is the grassy area, more or less a grassy knoll, just outside of the field house. I think this might be the second. Can I just? Okay, perfect. Okay, perfect. Sorry, it's a little bit large. It's the grassy knoll that you can see is identified just adjacent to field number 1, which wraps around to the front or the back side of the field house. We were given occupancy for 1,000 persons in that space, and it would only be used for games or event-specific usage, maybe 15 to 20 events a year, primarily the usage of the VLOX Rugby Football Club. It essentially would extend right into our field house, which would allow occupancy from the field house down onto the lower grassy area, where we would set up bleachers and have it as a fenced-off area for beverage consumption that West Shore Parks and Recreation staff would be serving. It's again, like I mentioned, it's capacity is 1,000 people. However, we would never expect or permit anything over 150. There's not a lot of room there. It is to building code. That's how we came up with these numbers. But as you can see, that the area that is identified is on a hill, and it does wrap around to the front of the back side of the field house. So again, 150 to 250 people maximum which would be a comfortable amount for that space. As the weather's changed as well, we expect people to be indoors more than outdoors too. But during the month of September, when the season is starting, it is the request of the rugby club to use that space. The space would not be used for any other purposes other than for being a part of a sporting event such as a rugby game or a soccer game, and so on. One area that we were removing from our licensed space is the galleon room, which is typically in the past, maybe not so much in the last 5 or 6 years, but in the past it has been used for catering events, celebrations, small weddings, but we just find that space isn't being used as it had been in the past. We have additional spaces such as in the seniors auditorium and in the field house where we can use for those type of opportunities. We do have a catering endorsement license, which allows us to take a space that is unlicensed and use it if the galleon room does become requested in the near future. So we still have the opportunity, but we don't need to keep it licensed and continuing to pay the permit fees for it. The last document I'll show you, which we just saw a second ago, is just a snapshot of the radius around the space that we're talking about licensing, which is the main area, which would be the grassy knoll behind the field house. There's a 645-meter radius from that space to the closest residency, so we don't see much of an impact on the residency in the neighborhood with this addition to our license. Wade, do you have anything else to add?
No, the main thing about it is it's not a venue for concerts. It's not those are separate licensing like Rocker Shores is. This is strictly for viewing of rugby or soccer on field one. Anybody that's been down there, like I said, it's a slope area. There's a lot of bleachers on it, and so it's for viewing, and somebody can have beer with the lunch.
Council?
Thanks. Just a quick question. In looking through the report, I didn't see any numbers listed for Bear Mountain's liquor license, so it's not affecting Bear Mountain?
No, Bear Mountain, the Q Center we've renamed it, has its own specific liquor license that is for stadiums. It's a stadium endorsement license, so it is completely separate from the liquor primary license, which we're moving towards for our other facilities.
Okay. And when I was reading through the report, and maybe I'm confusing the names of the buildings, but the building that's beside the velodrome, not the field house, it's...
The clubhouse?
The clubhouse, there
Yeah.
you go. Is it being impacted by these changes?
No, it's not.
No.
No.
Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else? Jeff, I've been it's been a while now since I've been involved in the liquor industry, but I know through the drastic and very substantive changes that have been ongoing for the last few years, is this part and parcel of them moving away from in the past where you may have had to, apply for special occasion permits time and time again? This allows then sort of a broad approval of an area so that you're not going through those individual
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, the special occasion
applications?
licensing
kind of being
application process is we still receive those applications from user groups that they want to do their own beverage garden, but they're really moving towards a streamlined process where we have a single license that we can use on site, or like I mentioned before, with a catering endorsement allows us to take our catering license either off-site or into a facility that is available for us to use.
And having been part of user groups at the facility, I can see how beneficial having this will be for the benefit of all those user groups when they go to those things. So appreciate that. Anybody else? So...
Well, Your Worship, it's Council's pleasure. Do you wish me to just carry on and we deal with this report now, or come back to it later on the agenda?
We might as well just jump ahead. I think we're okay with that. Councillor Knoll? You okay? Sure.
Well, Your Worship, so why is this issue before Council? The report does indicate that all liquor primary applications for new patio areas and for occupant load increases, which is the case here, must be forwarded to the local government body where the facilities are located, so that's Colwood, for Council's consideration. Now, the city can choose whether or not to provide comment or input. That's totally up to Council. And if the city chooses to not provide input, Council can do that. They can choose not to provide input into the license application amendment and may opt out of providing input on this application or any further applications. So the options that are open to you this evening, and we're not actually recommending a council decision tonight in regards to this matter. We're actually recommending it be considered at a future meeting. But the options that are available to you are essentially threefold. You can provide a council resolution to the branch general manager with council's comments and recommendations with respect to the application, which would require public notification and or public participation at a council meeting. A formal public hearing would not be required. Option 2 would be provide a council resolution to the liquor branch advising that the city does not wish to provide comments or recommendations on this particular application. Or the third option is to provide a council resolution to the liquor branch that council wishes to opt out of this process entirely and will not be providing comments on this application or any further ones down the road. We're actually not recommending options 2 or 3. We feel that there should be at least an opportunity given to the general public to provide any comments before council passes a motion, or of course it's your option not to get involved, but we're not recommending that. What we're recommending is that council receive this report tonight and that further consideration of the application be deferred to the October 13th council meeting. That would be in advance of the liquor branch's deadline. And in the meantime, what we're recommending is that staff be directed to put a notice in 2 consecutive issues of the local newspaper and on the website, advising the public in general terms of the application and informing the public that an opportunity will be given for members of the public to provide any comments to council at the October 13th meeting prior to council's consideration of a resolution to be submitted to the branch. So we are recommending that council do provide some comments, that we give the public an opportunity to at least make themselves aware and come to a council meeting or provide any correspondence which we'd bring back to you. We're not recommending that you not pass a motion or that you opt out of the process, Your Worship. Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments from council?
I'd just be prepared to move the recommendation.
Comments further?
So just a point of clarification, just so I get it right, Gary, if we want to provide comment and support the application as an owner, which I think we should support it instead of remaining silent, because it's a benefit for us, we have to advertise and get public feedback. We can't just say we support it, we write a letter, off we go.
The liquor branch would want to know what form of public participation or notification we enacted. We're not required to hold a public hearing per se, but they would want to know what steps we took to notify the public.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Anyone else? Gary, in the draft advertisement on the last page of that report, it talks about written comments received by October the 5th. The recommendation speaks to having folks come in at the October 13th meeting. Do we need to address written comments received in the recommendation? Or just, like, I want to keep our dates and opportunities?
Well, the objective
aligned?
would be that we'd advertise, members of the public could come out and speak to council at that meeting, but any written comments that would be received, we'd have those on the agenda before you.
Okay. And then in the fact that we are only a member of a group of municipalities that fund for the facility, how does this all fly with the other members? They get their own choice in regards to what route they want to take?
Your Worship, we could certainly refer it to those other member municipalities, but the reason it's before you tonight is because West Shore Parks and Rec is located in Colwood. So really, those are the municipality is the only agency that the liquor branch would really be interested in hearing from.
Thank you. So we have a moving of the recommendation and a seconder. Call the question then. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. We can retrieve our 2 missing council members. Thanks, Councillor Trace. Jeff and Wade, thank you very much for your presentation. And Are they having a party back there? Just so both of you are aware, we actually addressed the item on the agenda all in one.
Excellent.
So when we get to that one further in the agenda, it will be skipped. Moving then into correspondence requiring council direction, we have a letter before us from the Capital Regional District dated September 10th in regards to the CRD Fairness and Transparency Advisor scope and application role, and we have been asked to provide feedback by October the 1st.
Well, Your Worship, I can speak to this. This item of correspondence basically, I think, arrived on Thursday. The CRD is asking for comments from core area municipalities by October 1st, so this is why we put it on the agenda. As you're aware, the CRD has recently appointed a fairness and transparency advisor for the Liquid Waste Management Plan Regional Sewer Project. And they've attached correspondence which has been considered by the Core Area Liquid Waste Management Committee. But they've forwarded a component of the correspondence, and it's a bit of a challenging read from the Fairness and Transparency Advisor, but they've forwarded a component to municipalities for comment. And I'll draw council's attention to page 45 of the agenda, page 3 of the Fairness and Transparency Advisor's report, and it's issue number 3, the scope and application and role of the Fairness and Transparency Advisor. And this is the component of the report that the CRD has forwarded to council for comment. And it's before you because essentially it comes down to the issue of site proposals that may be coming forward from host municipalities. And essentially there's 3 parts. The Fairness and Transparency Advisor is recommending that it is recommended that the committee support Objective A, which is that the primary objective is to ensure that the project overall is fair and transparent, inclusive of site proposals from host jurisdictions. So she's making the distinction between, does her jurisdiction just cover the CRD's component of this particular project, or should it also include site proposals from host jurisdictions and the process and the method that municipalities will deal with that issue? She's recommending it cover both, not just the CRD component, but also site proposals from host jurisdictions. She's also recommending that to ensure that all processes related to the core area sewage treatment project are fair and transparent. Again, that all processes, including municipal processes to deal with sites, are also included in her mandate, rather than just a focus on the CRD's more prescribed role. And then finally, she's also recommending that that her jurisdiction include not only the process after it has occurred with a view to affecting future similar processes, but also attempt to affect and inform the process in its path. So what she's saying there is that she would have jurisdiction to, I guess, review and get involved in not only a site selection decision after the fact, but also while that whole process is going on. So in a nutshell, and again, it is a bit of a challenging report, but why this is in front of you tonight is the CRD, the Liquid Waste Management Committee, is asking for any comments that municipalities may have, and we have some sites that have been potential sites that have identified in Colwood, as to I think the rationale here is: do we have any comments on her recommendations that her jurisdiction not only just look at more just the CRD's role in this, but also include the component where municipalities are going through processes internally to review site proposals and make recommendations to the CRD on appropriate sites. I think that's it in a nutshell.
Thank you. And I concur with the direction from the board side of things as well. Any comments, questions, Council? Councillor Day?
Well, just, I sat in, I was at this Core Area Liquid Waste Management Committee meeting where this was discussed, and I just wanted to add that definitely was a concern around the table how far her role should go, and whether or not, the role would be strictly for looking at the CRD's processes, or if it would be looking also at the municipality's process, because her role is to be kind of the ombudsperson for members of the public to be able to go to and say, this isn't fair, or this isn't right, or they didn't do the, over here they did this, and in this other area they didn't. The Liquid Waste Management Committee wanted to, in an abundance of caution, refer this back to municipalities to be sure that they were doing, they weren't straying into jurisdictions other than their own. So that's why they wanted to know for sure what the role of this ombudsperson should be, whether that would also be a broader role to include looking at how municipalities have themselves handled that process of site selection.
Any other comments, questions from Council? Need a recommendation and seconder, please?
Well, there is not one included, I don't believe, with the report.
I guess it's basically whether we support or do not support the recommendations that are in issue 3 around the scope and application in those 3 areas.
Her recommendation was that it be inclusive of the municipal process, and I mean, it's going to be different in different municipalities. From my perspective of Colwood's process, I think we've had a very good process on site evaluation and site selection, and we've been very engaged with our community. So, I feel comfortable that I don't feel that our citizens need an ombudsperson looking at our municipal portion of the process. But, I don't know if that, I feel the same way. Once it moves to a different municipality, it may not, I might not feel the same way, right? If our sewage treatment plant ends up being in a neighboring municipality, not our own, how would we like our people to be treated? Do we want them to be able to go to the ombudsperson with concerns? And how far do we want her to be able to go? Do we want her to be able to do something before it's completely derailed, or do we want her to wait till it's over and tell them how they might build someone else's sewage treatment plant? I think, personally, even though it's a little bit stepping into our bailiwick or any other municipality's bailiwick, because we're all in this together, we would want to take her best advice and her best practices for the most positive outcome. So I think her greater role is perfectly acceptable from my perspective.
Anyone else? Do we need an actual motion, or is it just a support? recommendations?
Well, I don't think the
Don't
letter
see
is
anything from the
totally clear. I wasn't at the Core Liquidate Waste Management Committee meeting. They're just basically asking for comment and feedback by October 1st. If we were silent, then I don't know whether that would presuppose that we were supportive of the recommendation from the Fairness and Transparency Advisor. My recommendation would be that you would want to pass some sort of a motion either way.
So let me take a stab at it then, and say that I would propose that the City of Colwood supports an expanded role for the Fairness and Transparency Advisor, including commenting on the process within municipalities and involving her advocacy during the process. So that would in fact include the recommendation that's on page 4 of 24, which would be to comment on a process after it has occurred and to attempt to affect or inform the process in its path. So if the Transparency and Fairness Advisor had been in place, for example, when Esquimalt was putting up their hands and saying, this is not acceptable, you can't do this, then the Transparency Advisor might have been able to step in and say, okay, CRD, that this is not going well. Don't keep on going down this path. You need to address A, B, and C issues. So it would have provided, in that case, an extra voice to Esquimalt, I believe. Mr. Nason, can you just double check? I'm reading that they're looking for input on issue 3, 1 and 2 and 3, not necessarily 4.
My understanding is they're looking at
page 4, pardon me.
issue 3 only, and there's three
sectors.
components to that.
Yeah, okay. A seconder for Councillor Day's stab at it? I'll second it. Any further discussion?
Sorry, could we say it again? What are
I
we
think
doing? Like, just, and I don't need specific wording. Just give me the general concept. What's the general?
I'll take a stab at it. Essentially, I look at it almost as two components. That we would be saying with this motion that her jurisdiction, her authority, should include all processes related to this particular file, not just municipal, not just CRD processes, but all processes that are undertaken by member municipalities, most particularly the process of how proposals for sites are determined and decided. And the second component is that her authority should also not just be looking backward after the fact, but also be, what's the wording here? To comment on a process after it has occurred with a view to affecting future similar processes. So, yes, she can look back, but also attempt to inform the process in its path. So get involved while ostensibly we'd be selecting sites, for example.
Yeah. Clear? Yep. Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on then to new business, finance and admin. And we have skipping 6.1.1 because it's been dealt with. 6.1.2, memorandum from the Deputy Director of Finance in regards to the tax sale update.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll speak to this report on behalf of my deputy. This is basically for council's information because according to the community charter, we do annually have a requirement that if folks haven't paid their taxes for 3 years, we do have to put it up for tax sale. Now, it is a bit of a moving target because we come up with the list and generally a lot of folks don't want to see the property go in the paper, and we've had a pretty good uptake here. So we're down to, the count this afternoon was 22 properties. We're doing this as a bit of a courtesy to council members because this does go in the paper and you don't know if it's friends or neighbors or whatever, just to give you a bit of a heads up. It is public information, but just so you know what is on the list here. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to address them. Otherwise, it's for your information only.
Thank you. And sorry, Andrea, I should have spoken to you ahead of time, so I probably will be catching you off guard. There was a property on Royal Bay Drive as of last year that was the upset price was $60,000. Nobody made a bid on it, and so it came back to the city. And it was my understanding that the bank was going to actually walk away from that piece of land, so that was going to revert back to the city. And I'm just curious what the update is on that.
I can actually update that because I realized after I had read this that
and sorry, just before you do, just to clarify for the rest of council, the property I'm talking about is at the end of Royal Bay Drive, where it was a development that was going to be the condos that tiered down the hill. So, sorry.
Yeah, and thank you. Good question, because I realized that when this was written, our expert on this topic was away on vacation, and it does state that they have been all redeemed, and that property has not been redeemed, and we have been told they will, but we're very close to the deadline on the 1-year property. And I will tell you, this is the first time in my experience we've seen a property not actually been redeemed by the 1-year date. It's very unusual that the city could actually wind up to be in possession of that particular property. So we'll keep you posted on that one.
And yeah, that's wonderful. And just so the council knows, the property value is like over $2.5 million. So I think on Royal Bay.
Yeah, I thought it was more like 400 and some thousand, but that's at this point that's a moot point. Like we'll see what happens there. I would expect that there would be a redemption. I was quite surprised that it's gone this long.
Any other questions to our director?
Sorry, one more.
Yes?
Tax sale? When is that happening?
It's always the last Monday. So in my report, I believe we mentioned it's September 28th.
Thank you.
10 o'clock.
Move receipt, Your Worship.
Second. Please. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Andrea. Again, coming from your department.
Yes, this one is from myself.
Information IT.
Yeah, and again, I wanted to keep council in the loop because we are making some great progress on moving forward our IT systems within City Hall. And I have provided you with some background information here. Our acting CAO, Gary Nason, and myself initially requested 3 consulting proposals for an IT needs assessment because we wanted to pull together what was it we actually needed here, not what us lay people thought we needed, but get an expert in here to give us a bit of a list and help us prioritize it. And based on the cost proposals that we received back and experience and knowledge, we have selected Per Christensen, who basically built the IT department from the ground up for the city of Nanaimo. He was there for 25 years and extremely knowledgeable. And he has already made some great strides in terms of meeting with all of our staff and coming up with a bit of an action plan, which are attached to my report in terms of various consulting projects. These, at this point, are not prioritized, but we are in the process of doing that. And just a couple things for council's information. Most of you are aware that we have a 5-year IT services agreement with Langford. Per is definitely recommending that we keep them as our back-end service provider. It's a far more cost-effective way for us to get that very technical expertise. And he is going to be assisting us in the renewal of that agreement. So that's very helpful. One thing that was identified in our financial plan for the current year was this fiber optic cable, and this is a critical piece of our infrastructure so that we're not sort of doing a beam me up Scotty over Triangle Mountain and we've got a dish on someone's deck. We're really trying to get rid of that. It's a bit insecure, to put it mildly. And the fiber optic will allow us to upgrade our connection to Langford through our Shaw internet service once that's in place. Will also allow us to streamline our, we'll have a server backup over in the fire hall so that we can have more secure backup of our data. And it will allow us down the road to hopefully go to one telephone system. Right now the fire hall has their own, we have our own. So it's just a huge cost saving and we sort of have to start there. It's like putting in the foundation first before we can put some of these other building blocks in place. And as Per is working his way through this list of projects, you'll see that the IT strategic plan, this is a very large project. We don't anticipate it'll get completed this year, but we'll certainly get some good foundational pieces in place. He will assist us with a bit of the 5-year budgeting. I pulled some numbers out of the air last year, but fortunately we have put a fair bit of money aside, which we'll be needing to implement a lot of these projects. We already have a draft job description in place for the IT coordinator position, and we will be working with the union in that, and he will assist with recruitment for that position. We have a number of licenses here, and Per will be doing basically an inventory and an audit to make sure that the number of licenses we're using, we actually have paid for them, and if not, we will be making sure that we shape up on those topics, because it's one of those things that is rarely done. But for council's information, any of our software providers have the right to come in and actually audit us and see if we are paying for the number of licenses that we're actually using. So Per is going to be proactive and do that for us, and I'm very pleased about that from an internal control point of view. Our telephone system, for those of you who have perhaps had the pleasure, dubious, of using some of the phones here with the sticky keyboards, those phones haven't been made for a while. The good news is that there were a lot of them made, and we're actually going to have a bit of a stockpile of some replacement parts just for the immediate, really near term, say for a year, because it's not cheap to replace a switchboard, and it can be anywhere from about $1,000 per actual phone up, so it could be between 50 and 100. This is something Per has a lot of experience in, and he will be helping us get some quotes for next year's financial plan, but that is something we will have to plan for. Hand in hand with that, we do not have much in the way of IT policies, so that a lot of places where many of you may have worked in the past, you actually sign off on some policies and say this is acceptable use, and we definitely need that, and this is something he will be assisting us with, so that with new hires they will actually get a checklist, and these will be some of the things that they will be seeing. In addition, we've got a whole lot of day-to-day activities going on. Per did a bit of a training session today with some of our managers about how to share large files, and I think that went over very well. He has a very nice, I've heard nothing but rave reviews from our staff. He's very good with people, very low-key, personable, positive, and gets lots done. So I, again, wanted to just make sure council knew what we were working on that project. There's a lot going on. So if you have any questions.
Thank you. Any questions, Council? Councillor Day?
Just to start off, I'll move receipt of the report, which is excellent. And I just want to add that it'd be great. I know we're juggling everything to make room for UBCM this month, and Finance hasn't had a chance to meet because of summer holidays, and then UBCM takes a big chunk out of September. But it would be great to get feedback from the Finance and Administration Committee on our technology. More than anything, to keep our public in the loop on what we're doing. And I do remember when we replaced our phone system the last time. It was a long time ago, early in my first mandate. And so that's quite a while. And so definitely are some problems. And great report, and thanks for keeping us in the loop.
Seconder, please. Second. Any further discussion? Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. 6.1.4, again, Andrea, in regards to acting, or the hotel revitalization tax exemption.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is a bit of a two-part harmony here this evening. So first I'm presenting a report, which is introducing the bylaw amendment, and then later on the agenda this evening I'm asking for consideration of 3 readings for this amending bylaw. And I see that we have some of the principals here this evening. A great deal of time and effort has gone into this topic. It was a file that I created, and it's grown from 1 4-inch thick binder to 2 or 3 in order to get to this point this evening. And I have outlined a little bit of the background here, is that this is a very complex development, a large development known as West Ridge Landing, and it's been in process of being built over a number of years. And at this point, those of you who have driven by the site, probably all of us, have seen that the hotel is very much nearing completion. I saw an article in the paper here. And the existing bylaw that was passed over 2 years ago now, 2.5 years, we do have to make some tweaks to it. And I've gone through that in the discussion section of my report. What I can tell you is that the proposed amendments here have been very carefully reviewed both by our lawyers and the proponents' lawyers, and we've reached agreement on that. And it does not preclude, you know, if we have a sudden surge of hotels being built in Colwood, that this particular amendment will not affect that. In other words, it remains as a broad document that can be, it's a living document that can be used for other developments. So we're being very careful in our suggested wording changes. Attached to my report, in addition to the proposed amending bylaw, is the original bylaw, because some of you who were not on council at the time, I thought might want to just have a look at that. And it's a very complex bylaw because there's a number of schedules there, and I've laid out in my report the critical timeline that we're on, because right now, this evening, we would like, with council's permission, to give the bylaw 3 readings. And we then have to put a couple ads in the paper to meet community charter requirements. And those have already been, they're scheduled to go for this coming Wednesday and the next week. And then once council passes this bylaw, gives 4th reading and approves it, then we have an agreement drawn up between ourselves and the proponents. And once the construction is completed and the occupancy permit has been given, there's a final building inspection, occupancy permit, then we can issue the exemption certificate. Now, the reason I'm giving you this amount of detail is all of this has to be done by the end of October. So there's a very tight series of deadlines here. And I think I've probably talked enough because it is complicated, and I've tried to make it sort of as clear as possible why we're doing it. So perhaps I'll just step back and see if you have questions.
Certainly open the floor to the council for questions. Councillor Nault.
Just wanted to double check if I have the estimate of the value of this correct. It's estimated at $100,000 for 2016 and continues for 10 years. So basically, we're giving the hotel a tax break of $1 million. Is that correct?
This is correct. This was the original bylaw. This was the intention. Those figures, Councillor Nault, are based on the building permits that have been issued. And just to clarify, to ensure we're all on the same page, the exemption does not apply to the land. It applies to the value of the improvements of the hotel. But you are correct in what you've said.
Just out of curiosity, this all went through on the previous council. Why is it back before us?
Because the original bylaw, the way it was written, will not allow us to give the exemption because of some technical challenges. In other words, there was some construction started on the site. There were some building permits that were pulled. And when you read the original bylaw, that was actually not covered. So the actual amendments that I discuss in here allow the, let me just look at the fine print here. We're broadening it out because originally that site was one title. It has since been subdivided into about 4 different properties to accommodate Lee Valley, the different businesses that are there. And we were not able to complete the exemption agreement. We did not have a clear title because it was changing. It was in flux. It was being subdivided. And now that that has clearly been subdivided, we have a clear legal agreement. We can now proceed to go through the steps that are laid out in those original bylaws. But we had to make these amendments to allow it. The other issue we had was one of the first meetings I had was with BC Assessment, and they said the way your bylaw is written, we're having a very hard time understanding what the meaning of baseline assessment is, because there was some already some improvements on the site because there'd been some work, there'd been some foundation work done, there'd been some concrete poured for the lower level of the parking garage, and we had a great deal of difficulty interpreting what the bylaw meant. This cleans up the wording, and we have agreed, for instance, on the existing value of baseline assessment. So it's about $330,000 that will remain forever taxed as improvements that were already on the site before the bylaw was written.
All good? Need a recommendation and a seconder?
I'll move the recommendation, Your Worship.
Second.
Any further discussion? Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. 6.2, 6.2.1, rezoning application for 544 Winthrop.
Thank you, Worship. In this application, the applicant is requesting to rezone the property at 544 Winthrop Road from the Rural 1, A1 zone, to a modified residential 1, or R1 zone, to allow the creation of up to 5 lots, which is 4 additional lots being created from the current single lot. The applicant is proposing a modified R1 zone to only allow a maximum of 5 lots, opposed to up to 8 lots that could be created with the standard R1 zone, although the current applicant only wishes to create 1 additional lot at this time, adding that the applicant has agreed to register a conservation covenant on the property. The applicant gave a brief presentation on the proposed project committee, stating that the lot is 1.4 acres and the owner is only wishing to create 1 additional lot at this time. In the future, there is the possibility of creating 1 to 3 additional lots, and it's more depending on the road right-of-way that the city is requesting. And I think the applicants mentioned that because of the topography of the property, it would be challenging to get 5 lots, but they needed that flexibility. The applicant also informed the committee that an environmental impact study has been done, and the conclusion was that a house could be built on the back of the lot without significant impact, but further development would need a further study to be done. It was recommended by committee. I won't read the whole recommendation, Your Worship, but I will move the recommendation before us.
Seconder, please.
Second.
Discussion? Councillor Day?
Thank you. As you can tell from the minutes, I was opposed to this, and my primary reason for concern is that it's a good piece of land that is being asked to dedicate a roadway which I feel is not following the correct contour line. And in fact, the extension of the roadway from there results in the roadway being very close to existing homes, which weren't actually in the notification radius for this application. So there are homes that may be impacted who may be unaware that they would be impacted by the implications of the road dedication that's being required. There are other larger properties in the area that may develop in the future that could provide access. So for that, that's really my only reason for being opposed to this development. I think it's a very respectable desire by the owner to do what he's doing. I'm just concerned that the road right-of-way conflicts with the existing well that's on the property, and is possibly not in the right place for future growth.
Councillor Martin?
Can we have staff please comment on that?
I've walked the site with the applicant and with our deputy engineer, who's not here right now, and this is the right place. It can be deceptive looking at contours because when the flights take place that provide the pictures on which the contours are based, of course, the camera can't see down through the trees. So you tend to get contours inferred from the treetops. And when you actually go on site, you find that the contours are different. The provision of this piece of potential future road, because it's not actually dedication immediately, does not determine the further alignment of all of the road. It simply determines, you know, that from that point you would have to curve in one direction or another or go straight, depending on how things go from there. It's very difficult to foresee exactly how development might occur, but it was concluded amongst us that this is the best chance if council wishes to allow for the further development of the properties beyond.
Just to follow up, I heard mention of a well in that vicinity. Is that any impact in your?
Well, this potential road right-of-way has to go through one edge of the property or the other. If you put it through the middle, you really mess up the development potential for that property. And you know, I can't see that the property owner would proceed under those circumstances. So if it goes down the other side, it goes through the house. If it goes down the side we've chosen, it would impact the well eventually. Although I believe the well would be outside the paved portion of the road, it may be possible to preserve it, but you won't know that for certain until the time comes.
Anyone else? Mover and seconder on that one. Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Development variance permit, item 6.2.2 for 3460 and 3462 Vantage Point.
Thank you, Worship. In this one, the applicant has applied for 3 variances for strata lots 1 and 2. The variances would have the effect of varying the maximum allowable floor area ratio, the maximum allowable gross floor area, and the maximum allowable limit of enclosed garage area permitted to be excluded from the calculation of the floor area. In simpler terms, what they're simply proposing to do is bring 2 lots together into one and build one house. And during the discussion at the committee meeting, there was good community support, actually, for making this happen for a variety of reasons. Before I make a recommendation, however, the Director of Planning wishes to say a few words.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to make a clarification, and this came to my attention through one of our staff members that brought it up. So on page 4 of 7 of the staff report that outlined this application, there was a reference to the current zoning regulations limiting the combined gross floor area of the 2 strata lots that are being proposed to be consolidated to a total of 800 square meters. This calculation, when including floor area ratio restrictions, should have been stated as a total of 700 square meters. Staff felt that it was necessary to make this clarification, but it does not affect our recommendation to proceed with the requested variances subject to the recommended conditions. Thank you.
With that, Your Worship, it was recommended by committee, and I so move the recommendation before us.
Seconder?
Second.
Questions, comments? Councillor Day?
Just to clarify, again, it's obvious from the minutes that I was not in favor of this particular development. And just to let everyone know my reasons for not being in favor of it is that this house is going to be roughly 6,730 square feet. And a house of that size, I have never voted for yet. A house that is that large, even though some variances have come forward in order to allow home-based businesses to be located in them. I still feel that the future uses are more than likely that they will at some point in time be suited out. And I don't feel that our regulations are doing an effective enough job of stopping that from happening. Any other comments, questions? Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Oops, I gotta get into back into my right agenda here. Sorry, folks, I was reading the report. Planning, advantage. 6.2.3, Memorandum, Director of Planning, typographical corrections to the Omnibus Bylaw, number 1590. Staff?
Thank you, Your Worship. So I'd just like to say thanks to our solicitors. They caught a couple small typos in the Omnibus Bylaw. They're outlined in the staff report. Really, there's just one numbering correction to make. And then also there was a subzone in the CS1 zone that was missed on one of the sections that touched on the permitted uses that were changing in the CS1 zone. So relatively minor typographical errors, but every comma and semicolon counts in these bylaws, so we bring it forward and recommend that staff receive the report that's presented tonight, and at the appropriate time during the bylaws section of tonight's meeting, rescind second reading of the Omnibus Bylaw number 1, Amendment Bylaw number 146, and give amended second reading as proposed. Thank you.
Move the recommendation, Your Worship.
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Moving into Transportation Public Infrastructure, 6.3.1, evaluation submitted proposals of Souk Road, Machosen Road Sewer Extension.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The council, or the committee, received a report from engineering on submitted proposals for the Souk Road, Machosen Road Sewer Extension. The proposals at this point cover only the design. We had a fairly good discussion on what was included in the project and who would be allowed to connect or not connect. Committee recommended to council, and I would so move, that the contract for the design of the Souk Road, Machosen Road sewers be awarded to Tetra Tech WEI Incorporated in the amount of $65,905 in accordance with their RFP submission dated July 4th, 2015.
July 14th?
July 14th, sorry.
Any questions, comments, council? Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Second item under transportation, 6.3.2, Transportation Master Plan Final.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The committee reviewed once again the Transportation Master Plan. Lively discussion followed. Committee moved that we recommended to council that the master plan be adopted. I opposed that motion, so I will not be moving that motion before council. If somebody else will move it, we can discuss it, and I will state my reasons.
Councillor Chong?
I will move that to council that the Transportation Master Plan be adopted.
Second.
Discussion, council. Councillor Day and Councillor Knott will follow with you.
Thanks.
And just before we get started, I understand that both of you have sort of recommendations, so if maybe we can have conversation before we actually get to a recommendation.
Sure.
Thank you.
Except that we already have a recommendation on the table.
You're both looking for amendments, though, as I understand it, within discussions.
So conversation.
So let's have a
first.
conversation, because maybe
Okay.
those amendments might take a different flavor or whatever, so we're not amending. Maybe.
Okay, I'm just trying to. Nope, that's not the right one. From my many list of many agendas, trying to bring up the transportation package. So, first of all, many of the changes that are proposed in the Transportation Master Plan are ones that have never been seen before and have not been contemplated in our official community plan. So I wondered if staff could answer for me how the residents will be informed of the proposed changes that were not contemplated in our OCP, and whether or not there will be an amendment to the OCP for the Transportation Master Plan, and whether or not there would be a public hearing.
Do you want to take that on at this point?
Certainly. No, this whole process has been fairly open in terms of public process, so I would say that residents have had ample opportunity to comment.
Thank you. I don't believe that the residents of many of the area of South Colwood are aware. Certainly, I'm sure that if I went and spoke to the residents of Elizabeth Ann, they have no idea. I just put that out there, that I feel that there has been a lengthy process, but I don't feel that our citizens have been fully engaged in that respect. It's not like if there was a rezoning on your street, for example, and it was close to you, or it was going to touch you or impact you, we would reach out directly to you. And in this case, we are talking about connecting roads that are currently cul-de-sacs, have always been cul-de-sacs, and you're talking about making them through roads to major connections, and those people have never received a letter from the city. So I feel that that warrants something extra. On page, looking at the appendices from the agenda that went to the Special Transportation and Public Infrastructure Committee, on page 62 of 114, that page is actually labeled both S15 and page 19 on the same page. Sorry, I'm just trying to get it to go to the page. iPads are really good, but they're not quick. Just learned how to get it to go to the page that I wanted to. So on page 62, Painter Road extension to Royal Bay says, and I quote, as part of the Royal Bay Development Plan, a scenario where Painter Road would connect through to the new internal Ryder-Hesdall Road link was evaluated. A review of potential traffic volume shifts from the Royal Bay neighborhood and the resultant impact on the neighborhood road network surrounding Dunsmuir Middle School resulted in consideration of an emergency vehicle and transit-only access to the Royal Bay neighborhood. It then goes on to say, if implemented, this connection would require some measures to ensure the link is not utilized by regular vehicle traffic. There has been no identified need, and this is my words, for emergency vehicle access previously, and transit has not indicated any requirement. So, given the nature of the problems, I believe that the right-of-way from Painter Road to Ryder-Hesdall Way should be dedicated as parkland and should support pedestrian and cyclist use only. It's a very necessary connection for pedestrians and cyclists, and there are other roadways. On the same page, it talks about the new connection between Wishart Road and VMP. and I quote, "A new road connection from Wishart Road to VMP via Bunker was tested to evaluate potential reductions in the impact of Royal Bay commuter traffic on the broader neighborhood road network, particularly Wishart Road and Carindale. Without a new connection, the CRD model shows that a significant amount of Royal Bay traffic will travel along Wishart Road corridor to Carindale to continue along VMP. So, and my evaluation shows that no other option seems to have been pursued, yet Latoria Road is 1 block away and connects to VMP with a truck route and a major corridor. On page 67 of 114 of the appendices, the second last bullet reads, and I quote, "Continue to explore opportunities to develop a new road network link between Wishart Road South and VMP to encourage Royal Bay and other future local development traffic to divert from the Carindale Road routing option to VMP. The Bunker Road linkage is not workable due to topography and is not a possible connection. A future road link should be Allendale Road from Machosen Road to VMP. Allendale is already a gazetted road from Wishart Road to VMP, as shown in our OCP for many years. The land is currently being developed with sewers, and the road links should be identified. So I propose changing this to read, continue to explore opportunities to direct traffic away from the Carindale Road routing option by developing connections from VMP to Wishart and Machosen Roads to Allendale. And I propose that the connections for Elizabeth Ann Drive and Bunker Road be for pedestrians and cyclists only. These changes follow the goals of the plan to increase cycling and pedestrian safety and access between commercial nodes and incentivizing the use of non-vehicular traffic for short-distance commutes, including school travel." And I'll leave my motion till later. Councillor Nault.
Thank you. My comments were quite similar. In general, the entire plan is based on continuing growth in Colwood, which we all agree is going to happen. I have some disagreements with how fast that's going to happen, especially with CRD projections, but nevertheless, the plan is designed to take into account those changes. It's sorely needed to update our existing servicing bylaws and DCC bylaws, as well as advance towards a more pedestrian, cycling, and transit-friendly transportation plan. A major shortcoming I found in this plan is it makes no effort to quantify how much Colwood traffic originates outside of Colwood and merely transits Colwood on its way somewhere else. I suspect at peak times this represents a large proportion of traffic, and my quick playing with numbers is probably 75% is moving right through the city and is neither generated by Colwood nor visiting Colwood. The plan makes no effort to quantify this impact, makes no effort to plan for it, and does not identify how much this traffic will increase over time. That's a major shortcoming. We really have to figure out a way to deal with that traffic. Future versions of this plan should definitely take that into consideration. A second major shortcoming of the plan has been identified by Councillor Day. Parts of it seem to ignore the OCP and propose works that I do not believe are supported in the current OCP, especially the new road networks connecting Wishart Road to VMP. There are numerous small errors and inaccuracies in the plan that we can fix as we amend the plan over time. However, I can't support the plan in its current form, so I'm proposing, I will be moving the following amendments. Remove all references to connecting Wishart Road to VMP and connections between Brookside Road and Elizabeth Ann. Remove from the map the Bunker Road extension, Bessenton Road extension, and Brookside Road extension. I do not believe any of these proposed extensions are supported by the OCP, and they're highly speculative of new development in the area. If and when we amend the OCP through the necessary public process, and the publicly supported amendments support these extensions, then the transportation plan can be revised. I believe right now we are using the transportation plan to drive the OCP, and the intent, I believe, should be the other way around. So if we would make those amendments, I could support the plan. One third amendment that I would like to see, and it's not quite as critical, but to redesign the road cross-section for Ocean Boulevard from Belmont Road to the lagoon. The current plan shows a shared pedestrian cycle path, and I think that path is dangerous and inappropriate given the downhill grade on the final part of that section. I have seen bicycles exceeding 60 kilometers an hour on that section of the road. You put them on a path with pedestrians, and pedestrians with baby carriages, and pedestrians with dogs, and we are going to guarantee an accident. So I would like to see that redesigned with the dedicated bike lanes.
Sorry, Jason, sorry to interrupt, but could you just explain that to me again? I'm sorry, where are you talking about?
Ocean Boulevard, where it cuts down from Juan de Fuca. Okay, it goes down. It goes down to, well, past that. Okay. So once you get past Belmont Road, it goes past the Military Families Resource Center and then Fort Rod. That is all proposed to be a shared bicycle pedestrian path. And part of that works, but certainly the downhill section, I think, is far too dangerous to have shared traffic between bicycles and pedestrians. And I would like to see that investigated and changed. So I'm not sure when the appropriate moment would come to make the amendments. If Councillor Day would allow me to make my proposal, I think they cover pretty much what she's been saying, and then we can investigate the part she had on Painter Road. And that was another very contentious one at committee meetings. There are many people concerned about Painter Road being extended to buses and emergency traffic, and council or staff made quite clear that what was proposed right now is cycle and pedestrian connection only. The proposal to do that would not be appropriate for vehicle traffic, but they also quite correctly pointed out that a future council could change that. That is not within our control, and we cannot make designs for all time. So my
if I could just have you hold for a bit, Jason, in fairness to the rest of council, if they have some comments or questions that might want to be raised, because you were part of the TPI discussion in full. So just wanting to ensure that everyone has an equal opportunity in a neutral zone before we get to shifting the focus, if that's where we go. Maybe I can start while you guys are thinking. I attended the meeting, and there was a lot of conversation around what was going on, and you know, that the result of our transportation master plan, you know, there may be some issues still well within it. You know, I heard conversations. There is a final edit review that's going to be done on this document to kind of clean up some of those double page numbering references to agencies that are a little bit confusing in there and that sort of thing, that anything that's been identified. So I'm sure that staff would appreciate anything that you might have come up with as a heads up on such and such a page within that. We do have to be careful. You know, this is not or at least I don't feel that this is a design specific. This is a general sort of broad scope view or picture of what things might look like, how we may connect our community of the future. And, you know, I'm reluctant to put such detail of I's and T's on there at this time, because we owe it to future councils to be able to shift and change as is needed. I mean, we had quite a different view of what the a Quattro project in its infancy might have looked like, and with a sea of house tops, rooftops and asphalt driveways and things, and we ended up with something quite different at the end of the day. Our OCP has been conceived in 2005. that we were brought together with that sort of broad picture in our OCP. We try to review every 5 years. We are in a process of getting a review underway with that again. So we could identify these areas of concern. I don't know if there's a way to gray section or yellow section within the transportation plan, that those are sort of immediate priorities that come through within the OCP or certainly targeted as being addressed. I agree that, you know, the numbering and future predictions of numbers and that sort of thing is never really held to true achievement in our in the numbers, but you know, we're stuck kind of using numbers that are in data that has been received through census, through other studies and that sort of thing. So we do the best job that we can to try and keep the right kind of context, keeping an eye open to the future, but without really tying our hands and binding our feet on decisions. So that's kind of my 2 cents. Councillor Logan.
Thank you, Worship. I echo those comments, and I took a look at this report not with a negative light, but actually more in a positive view, as looking at it with a ton of opportunities and possibilities. And you know, the one thing that we have to be careful of is that we don't pander to the limits within our own council term. So the purpose of this document is not to look at today, tomorrow, and year 3, but it's to look at years 5, 10, 15, and 20. So that means that council actually has to have a vision. And when we have a vision, it's gutsy. It takes some courage, and what it does is it outlines some possibilities for your community. And we may not always agree with every word in the document, but it's a start. It's a living document, and it's something that will continue to grow. And again, I think everyone at council has said, "You're right. You know, we don't support cars going down Painter Road into the gravel pit." We've said that, but we've also said that it would be stupid for us to give away that right-of-way and cut off the opportunity 20 years down the road, because I sure as hell don't know what that community is going to look like in 20 years. This whole place is going to be different. And, you know, we've run into the situation where we've cut off our nose to spite our face many councils ago, and we're paying for it in some respects. And I think we should use this as a tool to grow and prosper, and I think it's a great start. I respect the debate that the committee had, and you know, I think Rick McKay, who is a citizen representative on that committee, on the Transportation Infrastructure Committee, put it right. Says this is a living document, and let's just get on with it. We've been going at it for over a year and a bit or more. So, you know, sometimes I think we need to just move it and then tweak it as we grow and as we see the community change. So I won't be supporting the changes, actually. I'm going to support it as a committee saw fit to recommend. Thank you.
Any other comments at this time before I move to those who would like to propose amendments?
Thank you. I would have liked these proposals to actually have come through our committee, and I would have liked that the committee had an opportunity to discuss that and then vote on it, and then we would have had an opportunity. It is ultimately the council's decision, but it would have been nice to actually have committee comment on it and have their opinion of it before us. So I struggle when I have amendments to something when it comes from a committee, because I really believe it should have come from the committee to begin with. I struggle with some of the things that have been said today, and I completely disagree, for example, with Painter Road. I'll use Painter Road as a great example. Councillor Day has talked about that she doesn't want emergency vehicles going down Painter Road. Well, until this year, we've never had a high school down there. And the only reason we would ever have an emergency access to get there is because it's the fastest way for our emergency vehicles to get down to help our youth. And I find it really troubling when we start talking about we want to limit the ability for our emergency vehicles to make it to a location at the fastest opportunity. If it's inconvenient for residents on Painter because there's a police officer driving down there or a fire truck driving down there, I don't think any resident would be upset with that, especially if it saves somebody's life. And I think if Metchosin ever got shut down, they're going to have to go down Wishart, and then they're going to have to loop all the way around. I struggle with this, and I struggle with this. For example, Councillor Day has always advocated for youth, and you've always advocated. So it seems like there's sort of a dichotomy there with that. And I know the neighborhood's going to talk about that in the future too, but I think it's worthy of this discussion for future councils as that progresses forward. I'm actually coming from the same point as Councillor Logan, that I will be supporting the thing, and I will have to be very convinced about the amendments, and I would say to both Councillor Day and Nault that, and Councillor Nault has said that he will vote for it if his amendments are passed, because I know Councillor Day on Painter and Metchosin, we moved a whole bunch of motions, and then you still voted against the thing. So I would need some assurances that you're actually going to vote in favor of the transportation plan before I would vote in favor of any amendments.
Any other comments?
If I may just respond to one part of Councillor Martin's statements, the plan as envisioned does not have emergency or transit access from Painter Road down.
I know, this was just a discussion.
It was a discussion, and it may be a future council, once that area is developed, will see that as a necessity. The current plan does not have that, and I support that as it is now.
And I'm glad you say that, because I completely disagree with that, and yet I'm still voting in favor of the transportation master plan, because I don't agree. I believe that emergency vehicles should have access to Royal Bay High School, and I think it's something that future councils will have to discuss. But just because I think it is, and the rest of the council thinks it isn't, I will still vote in favor of the transportation master plan.
Anyways, going to open it back then for any proposal you may have.
I would like to move the following 2 amendments to the transportation master plan, and I believe this will bring it more in line with our existing OCP, and certainly this plan will be revisited as we amend the OCP. So my 2 amendments are: remove all references to connecting Wishart Road to VMP and connections between Brookside Road and Elizabeth Ann Drive. 2, remove from the map, I have page 21, but there's about 3 different page numbers involved here, but the map has Bunker Road Extension, Byzantin Road Extension, and Brookside Road Extension. I would like to see all 3 of those removed. And again, once the OCP is amended to support that kind of thing, then it goes through the whole public process, and the residents in those areas will have adequate chance to comment.
And was there a second one?
The other one was that staff be directed to revisit the cross-section for Ocean Boulevard from Belmont Road to the lagoon. Again, I believe it's because the shared bicycle pedestrian pathway is too dangerous on the slope on the bottom part of that.
Second the amendments.
Discussion on the amendments, folks. Should we take them one at a time?
I would prefer that we take one at a time, because I want to question actually the deputy about the second amendment that Councillor Nault.
So the first one, in regards to the references to the accesses on the lower side, connecting Wishart, VMP, Brookside, and others, and to deal with that at OCP, that's what's on the floor for discussion. Councillor Day?
Thank you. Just thought I'd give you the correct pages. Page 64 of 114 in the appendixes for the additional road network options is the map that was being referred to that shows them all. And just to let you know that the Bunker Road extension is actually shown on Winthrop Road, not Bunker Road.
Staff?
Thank you, Your Worship. Let me see how best to approach this. First of all, there's 2 reports here. There's a background transportation analysis done by Adept Transportation which was early on, and we didn't go back at them and ask them to redo that report because we knew that we were going to draw from that those recommendations that we felt were workable for the plan. And that's the one that Councillor Day is referencing when she talks about, I guess it's page 19 and page 20 with the Painter Road extension where they talk about emergency vehicles in transit. That was, again, very early before we had the public process here where the people came out to express some opposition to that and also to express some concerns about the areas in South Colwood. So I guess so if we can put that aside and go to the main part of the report, we discussed in the main part of the report on page 115, it was page 191 of the agenda for the TMPI, but page 115 of the main part of the report, we talk about Bunker Road. And in that case, we're talking about Bunker Road in the future, and we're talking about Bunker Road where it is, where development is occurring imminently in and around that area, should that happen. And we think that if the area around Latoria Walk is successful, as a successful commercial area, then we expect that that will expand. I know there was talk of being a pub. Everyone loves a pub. There was talk about a number of things that would expand in that area. And in that case, and I think it also, we speak to the fact that there's just not enough space. There's enough road right-of-way, but there's not enough space to design that road safely as it exists. And quite frankly, we would not recommend any kind of a road through to VMP at this point because you couldn't possibly build it safely with bike lanes, with sidewalks, and especially with buffered bike lanes. And so my point is that we say in here that at this point, the topography of the area and the grades of the existing driveways appear to preclude the construction of this road in a form that could safely handle the anticipated traffic. Redevelopment along Bunker Road could provide an opportunity for this road to be constructed to the recommended standard. So we are talking, it's hard to say with a crystal ball, excuse me, without a crystal ball, and I have a few, but it would be 20 years down the road anyway when we're looking at that. So to me, it's irrelevant if it stays in or if it's removed from the report. It will come back at some point. What this does do is it provides protection language in a way to say that we can't recommend that that Bunker Road be opened at this point. And nothing else is on record as saying that.
If I could add to that, we did discuss during the process of arriving at this plan, it was questioned why Bunker Road was coming up again. And our response was, well, there's no record of it having come up before or any resolution. What this does is it considers Bunker Road and it rejects it. And that's good information for the future. It's good information to tell people in the future, this is not something that's easily done safely, and you should be wary of it if it does come up. And it's better to leave something like that for the future than to erase all mention of it again and have another group of people 5 years from now, 10 years from now, sitting around this table, considering it again without the advice of a previous look at it.
Could I just ask for some clarification? You referenced not being sufficient road width for all of the infrastructure that was required. Are you talking about on Bunker Road, or are you talking about Latoria Road?
I was speaking on Bunker Road at the on that instance. I was talking about Bunker Road and the fact that there's steep driveways above and below, and even though there's road right-of-way, there really is not the space to build it while those driveways are in place, because those driveways, especially the uphill ones, but same as the downhill ones, would go from being something that would probably never be even approved today. I think there's somewhere around 15% plus for some of them. You'd be taking those up to 18 to 20%, which is, there's no way would get through any kind of a design review at this point. So until those were developed to the point, and I'm just way off in the future, I'm thinking There's a commercial area nearby. It's kind of crept out into the neighborhood a little more, and there's townhouses developing, and then you have something where you have a townhouse that has parking on one level and it goes up from there. Until you get that kind of construction happening in there, which is a long way away, this road can't be built safely in a way to handle the traffic. And that's what we're trying to say in this.
Councillor Knoll?
If I may, the description there is entirely speculative of future development along that area. That development is not envisaged in the official community plan. Indeed, the whole area is hillside, and I believe 10 units per hectare. I can't see that ever supporting the need for that through road. So at which point the transportation plan seems to be driving the official community plan, and I believe that is 100% wrong. If we take those out and we revisit the official community plan and decide that we can change the densities there with public support, then we have to investigate how to improve the roads to support that. But right now, I can't support it because it's entirely contrary to the way I interpret the official community plan.
Any other comments? Councillor Day?
I guess I'm struggling because I don't want to get at all personal about it. But I came to the meetings and I brought specific page references, and I'd gone through the plan. I came to the podium at the Transportation and Public Infrastructure Committee meeting, and I brought my concerns to the committee, and nothing was done with those concerns. So it bothers me to hear council say that if our committee hasn't, done all of the amendments, that council doesn't want to have to do that work. Committees are a great source of an extra set of eyes, ears, and hands on every document, but they don't always do everything for us. Not everything is going to be done at the committee. So I did my very best to bring my concerns forward to the committee twice now, and I've met with staff as well to try to talk about what the issues are, and try to come up with a plan that will actually serve the citizens of Colwood in the near and the short term. So I'm looking to try to have a vision for Colwood. And one of the best examples I've ever seen of a vision is the riverfront in Portland, which was a result of a mayor 40 years ago when they were supposed to be building a new road and said, no, we're not going to put just another road down by the waterfront. We're going to save all this green space and all these trees and make it someplace worth being. And they put their money into transit and said, and of course Portland is famous for their transit. They're also famous for their riverfront. And Stanley Park is another example of a great vision. So I don't have any problem with being visionary. So just speaking to the amendment, I believe in the vision of this document. I don't believe that we got it all wrong. The goals in the document are excellent, and I spoke to that at both meetings, to try to put pedestrians and transit and cycling ahead of cars. So from that perspective, increased pedestrian and bicycle access and a lack of vehicle access for local nodes, I think is going to be good for people. I think it's going to be good for Colwood. I think it's going to be someplace you'd rather live because you walk through the forested path and carry your groceries home by walking. in a place where you're not being run over by cars and where it's pleasant to do it. So speaking to the amendment, I think that taking out those vehicle accesses between Veterans Memorial Parkway and Wishart Road is the right thing to do. And in terms of making amendments and then possibly not being able to support the plan in the end, it really does depend. Every time an issue comes to Colwood, I do my best to make it the best that it can be. And then if I can't support it, I still can't support it. I do try to be supportive, and I think that we have definitely got the right goals in mind. We just have some disagreements, I think, on how to get there, literally. And I want people to get out of their cars and walk and ride their bikes, and I want them to have options to do that safely. And so my vision for the future in Colwood includes trying to make that a reality.
Any other members on that one? Do we want to deal with them individually as motions? That's what I got from Councillor Logan. So is that appropriate with you, Councillor Knoll? Okay, so we have it moved and seconded out there. So in regards to the issue that we've just discussed, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion has been defeated. Item number 2, revisiting of the uses, the cross-section I think you used on for Belmont to the lagoon in regards to cycling and pedestrians. I see staff waving.
Through the chair, thank you, Your Worship. To Councillor Knoll, good catch, good point. We, again, the vision is to get this nice multi-use path down to the waterfront, but you're absolutely right, that's certainly too steep for that. I'm not quite sure how we'll split it and get go to bike lanes in that area, but there's always a way to do that. So I think that's a really a good catch. So thanks.
Anyone else? Seeing none, then there. So I'll call the question then on that one. All those in favor?
I don't think we have a motion.
Yeah, he made. Yeah, we did move a second. We just split them. That's all.
Okay,
so it's the same set. So that's the revisiting the lagoon and Belmont cross section. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Is there anything further, Councillor Day?
Thank you. I would move that connections from Allendale Road to Machosen Road and Wishart Roads be developed, and that is spoken to very briefly in the plan, that it will be done through a local area plan, but it didn't do any modeling for that, so I guess that's why it hasn't been mentioned. But I would just like to really emphasize, because I feel that's a very important connector to relieve the stresses that were identified in the report on Carindale Road.
Staff?
Thank you, Chair. My only concern with that one is yes, I agree. It's spoken to in the plan, and we could model that. It will increase the traffic past Wishart School, but will, as we redevelop the other side of the road from Wishart School, we could certainly introduce more traffic calming, and we're certainly close enough for enforcement. So certainly we can do what we need to do on that.
Any questions? Do we have a seconder, pardon me, for Councillor Days? Any questions further?
That's this one, the proposed change in grade.
What's that? Just.
It's the one on my piece of paper, the very last one. Connections from Allendale Road.
Right, second to last,
Yeah.
yes. You've got two, though. You've got two proposals.
Sorry.
I just moved that the very last one, connections from Allendale Road to Machosen Road and Wishart Road be developed.
Yeah, second page. Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
I'm not
It's
quite
just
sure
this
where
one.
he's got it. Where we have it. There it is.
You're asking to revisit this?
I'm asking just to emphasize it. It does speak to it in the plan. It
Yep.
talks about developing that area as part of a local area plan for the Allendale development area. And I am just adding that connections from Allendale Road to Machosen Road and Wishart Roads be developed.
Yes.
Thank you, Your Worship. So what we recommended in the plan is that the first property that comes forward to develop in that be compelled to do a local area plan of what the transportation should look like in there. And I think that would be an appropriate time to do it, because what we don't want to do is say, okay, we have a road here, we're just going to bang it through right now, and then perhaps it's not the best use in that development, because there's a fairly large piece of property there, and there's a lot of options that the planning department could work with them and engineering to come up with what's the best possible development in there. So we could emphasize it, but I wouldn't want to be prescriptive to the point to say we need to put that road through as it sits right now.
I have to add a bit to that too. Next year I'm going to build a pump station in that road.
Take your microphone off. For some reason you're getting feedback. Yeah, just, you can talk loud.
You can
Mike.
use mine.
Okay, I'll use Emmett's. Yeah, next year I'm going to build a pump station in that road that will probably mean that road can't be developed as it currently exists. The reason for putting it in the road is we have nowhere else to put it. There is no other land available. So that will require a new road network anyway. So we can't be very specific about the location of that future road.
I sense a question coming from Councillor Day.
Well, that's a gazetted road. So you're taking a road and making it not a road without any process.
Actually, no, we're not taking a road and making it not a road without any process. We're just interrupting it in the middle. It's a gazetted road right now, but nobody travels on it by vehicle, and that isn't illegal. And when they're able to travel on all of it except for 20 feet of it, that won't be illegal either. The point is, there is nowhere else to build the pump station.
Any further questions of staff or comments? Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion defeated.
And I have one last motion that I'd like to move, Madam Mayor. And it is the first one on the second page that I distributed to council, that on page 62 of 114, which is in the appendices, which I realize may be slightly different than the actual report. I would move that emergency and transit access from Painter Road to Ryder Hesdall Way be deleted, and that the plans support pedestrian and cyclist use only in a dedicated park.
Seconder? For discussion? You're puzzled.
I will second it for discussion, but is that actual reference to emergency and transit access in the transportation master plan, or is that in the appendices too?
It's in the appendices.
And the appendices I think you're referring to is the traffic report that had the same recommendations for the extensions. And again, I don't think we can change that report.
Right,
It's an
okay, so
appendix.
take out the page reference, sorry, and just say emergency and transit access from Painter Road to Ryder Hesdall Way.
And we still have a seconder on that one. Discussion, anyone? I'm a little bit. I can live with the fact that we don't need a transit and a emergency access at this particular time. We may not even need it in 20 years from now if you do projections of population and that thing versus reality. But once dedicated as park, I struggle a bit with that because then people have become accustomed to a name or an area or a use. Stick a picnic bench in there, whatever the case may be, and then it is like, I don't know what to try and change that so-called long-term accepted use. We have another property locally that's under development who, again, from neglect of the ownership and openness of not doing things, you know, there's a real struggle within the neighborhood to accept change. And again, I think it's a bit prescriptive to future councils if it remains road, or not a road allowance, but a right away, you know, in there. It gives us opportunities in 30 years from now. So that's a little bit of my hesitation on trying to support that particular request, the way that it's worded. Staff?
Thank you, Your Worship. This design, when we get to the point of building the trail and get everything we need to do so, the design will come forward to council. And from what we've seen at this point, that design would necessitate a fairly windy trail. Certainly in the upper area, there's going to have to be a couple of switchbacks. That mean it's not going to be effective in the short term as an emergency connector. And any redesign of it to do so would have to come before council again. So it's a fairly steep drop, and we need a couple of switchbacks. So I don't think it would be a short-term issue.
Okay. Anybody else? Comments? Councillor Knoll?
Just a quick question to staff. We don't have a dedicated park in that vicinity right now. Can the transportation master plan drive that, or that should be a zoning and land use decision? I believe it's not something I believe the transportation master plan can do.
Looks like we need a new mic.
I believe that we've started a process of bringing park dedications in Royal Bay to committee because they're such significant dedications, and those slopes along the edge of Royal Bay will be particularly significant because depending on how they're developed before they're dedicated, they could add a great deal of expense to maintenance costs. So they'll be coming to Parks Committee first and then on to Council.
All good? Councillor Day?
Thank you. I'll just speak to the reason for my putting that forward. And the reason is that we have another gazetted roadway, Applegate, that runs parallel to Dressler from Wishart all the way to what would be the extension of Painter Road. So there's a real opportunity for a linear park connection that could eventually connect with the perimeter path in Royal Bay and make for a very good cycling and pedestrian connection through that what is going to eventually be a highly developed corner of the property and provide a very safe route to school and from the residences to the elementary schools and the middle schools as well. So I just think it's an important corridor. I'm fine if the more appropriate place is for that to come forward in a park planning process. I wanted to put it out there because I feel that it's an important connection and one that could be supported. The long-term planning from the Master Development Agreement days with Royal Bay Development looked very much at what the response times were to the proposed high school, because the high school is where it was proposed 20 years ago. So not everything gets thrown out the window every 5 to 10 years. You know, the fire hall is on Machosen Road, so straight down Machosen Road and you get to the high school. So, and the only difference between it being through a park and it just being not a park is that you would have to convince the people via a referendum to change the use of the land. We're dedicated as park.
Anyone else? Call the question then on that motion. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Or I mean, motion fails. It's defeated. There's just too many hands in the air. Now we have to go back and address the main motion with the added one past amendment. So how just the original motion with amendment works? That has been already put on the floor by Councillor Chong and I think Councillor Logan. So with that add-in with the amendment, we'll leave it stand at that and have conversations, or anybody else wants to weigh in at the end of the day? Councillor Day?
Sorry, I just want to recap of where we are. The motion that passed, the amending motion, was to delete the connections between VMP and Wishart Road?
No, it was revisit the Belmont to Lagoon
Oh, okay.
cross-sections
Right.
in there within this before we get it finalized. So that would be the add-on as an amendment to the original motion that it be adopted.
Thank you. So, unfortunately, then I will be voting against the Transportation Master Plan, and I have stated from the beginning of my involvement, when the residents came out to speak strongly, quite a few of them, to talk about the connections and the inappropriateness of them, and the fact that they don't, the development that exists currently on the lands that are contemplated to be developed by the roads is currently completely in sync with the official community plan. And the development is talking about developing a floodplain and a peat bog. The list of problems associated with that development goes on and on. I have no problem with development so long as the issues are addressed first.
Anyone else? Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Moving on, folks, to Section 7 bylaws. Okay. Now, I just gotta, there's only one rescinding motion that we have to deal with, correct? So then we're moving into bylaw number 1596, first, second, and third readings, revitalization tax exemption amendment bylaw.
Move introduction, Your Worship.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried.
Move second.
Second.
Discussion?
Yeah, I do. Sorry, I'm confused. Were we not supposed to rescind something first?
No, not on this.
No, not this one.
Not on this one?
Yeah, that's what
The omnibus one.
It's
what
in
were
the
we
omnibus
rescinding?
one.
No, sorry. Just, I just want to be 100% comfortable. Did our Director of Finance not say that we were supposed to rescind something because of the previous one?
No.
No.
No,
Okay.
the word rescind
All right.
did not
I'm
cross
good
my
then.
lips.
Thank you. As long as staff are happy, then I'm happy.
Okay. Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried.
Move third.
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Item 7.2, bylaw number 1593, first and second readings on Colwood Land Use Bylaw number 151 amendment, zone text amendment, Pacific Landing.
Madam Mayor, I will ask to be excused.
That is an excuse.
I have a potential conflict of interest on that development application.
His wife then engaged with a consultant.
Move first reading.
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
Move second.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Grab Jason.
We missed you, so. We said, how can we get Jason back so fast?
Okay, so, or 7.3, bylaw number 1590, rescind second reading, motion to amend second reading as and then second reading as amended. So that's the one, folks.
I'll move that we rescind second reading of bylaw number 1590.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Now we need move second as amended.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Yes, and we only have two readings on that one. But 7.4, bylaw number 1588, final reading for Colwood Main Sewer Local Area Service Bylaw, Establishment and Loan Authorization number 598/2001, amendment number 34.
Move final.
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Final reading again for Colwood South Sewer Local Area Service Establishment and Loan, bylaw number 602, 2001, amendment number 3, LAS enlargement on Painter Road.
Move final.
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Bylaw number 1591, final reading, Colwood Main Sewer Local Area Service Establishment and Loan Authorization, 598/2001, amendment number 35 for 2438 Souk Road. Souk Rod.
Souk Rod. Yeah.
Move final reading.
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. 7.7, bylaw number 1592, final reading, Colwood Central Sewer Location Area Establishment and Loan Authorization number 480, 2438 Souk Road, amendment number 6.
Move final.
Well done.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. We have completed our in-camera. Is there anything that we need of in-camera release? And looking for adjournment.
Move
folks.
adjournment.
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Ta-da-da-da.